Hello and a warm welcome to our Irish Angle show in association with the William Hill Each Way Extra series. And as usual, I have Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle with me. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Vinny.
Now, the first thing I'll mention about that William Hill Each Way Extra series, they're supposed to have two races in Fairyhouse tomorrow, but it's looking a little bit dodgy. There's a precautionary inspection. The going is already heavy, and they're talking about maybe between 25 and 30 millimetres more rain due overnight, so not certain to go ahead, I suppose, tomorrow. But we're going to start off another thing to do with William Hill, a big news story from last week in the UK in particular, is they put up a £500,000 bonus for a horse that wins any of three trial races for the Grand National, and then wins the Grand National itself at Aintree in April. So the three races are the Beecher Chase, which is in Aintree, the Classic Chase, which is in Warwick, and the Grand National Trial at Haydock. Emma, this is some money. £500,000 bonus if you win both or two of those races. Seems extraordinary money considering that the National itself, I think, is worth about £500,000. So you're getting nearly the same again, £1,000,000 to the winning connections. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a huge incentive, I suppose, for connections to target, and I think anything like that will make kind of, I suppose, the one up to a Grand National more competitive, because sometimes connections like to maybe see the horse have a bit of a steady-ish warm up, I suppose, for a national, but this would be a huge incentive to go out and win one of those national trials and go and try and win the national. Then again, like, you'd be hitting well over the million mark with that. So yeah, it's huge, and you can imagine there'll be plenty of trainers from Ireland looking at that and trying to tag it both, because it's massive prize money for connections.
Yeah, that's the thing, Johnny, isn't it? You'd have to think there's going to be a lot of Irish runners in those three races. Like, we know all the top stables are targeting this Grand National now, Willie Mullins particularly, but also Gordon Elliott always. Henry de Bromhead has won it in recent years, Emmett Mullins as well. So we're going to get a lot of Irish trainers looking at that bonus and thinking this is achievable, I'd imagine.
Yeah, like it's the type of thing my old buddy Paul Byrne would look at. I understand he doesn't leave anything for the race in terms of those three races this year and the potential bonus. But I suppose if you look at it, those companies that were set up, was it Ayrton Risk, and those companies are set up. So when a football team and the club, or like say a football club, they want to pay their staff a big bonus at the end of the season, they'll ask for odds from the risk company, so that if in the event of the bonus coming off, they'll be able to basically they'll have backed the bonus themselves. They'll have backed the winning the double or whatever. They'll be able to pay the players, and it was a good business model, obviously, for the companies doing that. And I suppose what William Hill might be looking at here is that the chance of a horse pulling this off is pretty unlikely. It's obviously, you have such a massive field in the national. You have to have the prospect of one horse even having three goes at this doing the double is still unlikely, but it does engender quite a good bit of publicity. There'll be plenty of publicity around the three races. The various media will talk to trainers that have horses that could potentially pull it off, and I don't know with William Hill at the moment, but I suspect, and I am speculating here, I suspect William Hill sees that there's a gap in the market in terms of innovation with regard to racing, because we live in truly extraordinary times where bookmakers at one point were taking pretty much all their business on racing. I think a lot of bookmakers now, if racing stopped tomorrow, it wouldn't even cost them a second thought. It's extraordinary. I think there's a gap there. A lot of, the big bookmakers are moving away from racing. They're having less and less interest in it. Maybe William Hill sees a bit of a gap there, and these initiatives are to be lauded. For all that, I can completely see why they do them.
Yeah. The other thing, I think you talk about that risk assessment. I see William Hill are talking about 8-1 a horse to do the double, to win the bonus is what they think. So you could, in theory, you're going to have three winners of those races, presumably in the Grand National. And so there's three chances of it happening on the day, presuming they all make it between both races. But anyway, interesting thing. We'll move back to something else from last week, is the Melbourne Cup. We had a lady, rider winning it for the second time in 10 years, second time in history, actually. Jamie Mellom, who used to be Jamie Kai, isn't it? Fantastic. I've never seen a ride like it. How she got through some of the gaps she got through to win, but at the same time, I thought we were going to have an Irish winner with a furlong to run. Goody Two Shoes and Wayne Lord looked all over. What did you make of that, Emma?
Yeah, it was exciting. Like you said, the winner, I suppose everything just happened perfectly for Jamie Mellom. All the gaps seemed to open, and yeah, I think everyone was probably, anyone who got up to watch it, or anyone watching the replay without knowing the result, was definitely shouting Wayne Lord home, because it looked for a while that he was going to get there. But it's no hard luck stories really. You'd say like the way the winner won, it was very, very impressive and interesting. I think the only Australian bred horse in the field, obviously it's not high up in the ranking there to be breeding stayers in Australia, but I heard a few people say maybe that might be a turning of the tide now, because the prize money down there for stayers is incredible. Like it was a field dominated by Irish and Irish bred runners, French bred runners, a few from Britain as well, but winner was ultra impressive. Goody Two Shoes. I actually saw an interesting comment on Twitter. It was over, I think, 500,000 for finishing second in the Melbourne Cup. Would that be the highest ever prize money JP McManus won on a single race? Quite possibly, even though he didn't win, which is I thought was a kind of a mind blowing statistic. A few of the other Irish runners, it's hard to say. I think they all probably ran their race anyway for maybe a little bit unlucky. He was a good bit behind and they went to slow enough pace, and he ran his race, I think, finished it out well. If he was a bit closer to the pace, had a bit more luck, maybe he could have been a little bit closer. But yeah, Goody Two Shoes, what a performance. And like, it's mad to think, I think less than a year ago she was getting beaten in beginners chases here. So it's some turnaround. Like we saw it at the Breeders' Cup as well with Willie Mullins targeting that with a former hurdler at Ethical Diamond. So maybe it might be something that these jump trainers will look into more, testing out these good horses in the flat.
Yeah, without a doubt they will, I think. And it looks like any of these good stayers this side of the world are all being bought down into Australia, aren't they? And some of the ones that ran there are going to stay there and everything else. So it seems to be the way things are going. Their one big race is changing the whole thing globally when it comes to stayers. Another thing from down there last week that I thought was very interesting was Thomas Carberry, who's a brother of Paul and Nina Carberry, and obviously a son of the great Tommy Carberry. He went and won a Group 1 race, the Crown Oaks, with a horse ridden by Johnny Allen, an Irish rider, and bred by Martin Falvey, an Irish lad as well. What did you make of that, Johnny? Serious, impressive performance from the guys, and by all accounts, a very cheap purchase too.
Great story, that. I suppose on the Melbourne Cup, like Goody Two Shoes started the year beating at 66-1, beating 110 links in a mare's chase at Naas, and then to go from that in November. It's funny, you look at Ethical Diamond, how these things can work out. And I suppose JP McManus, just on Emma's point there, like his own breeding operation, I suppose he's had a lot of mares go to top sires in the National Hunt Fair and haven't really produced maybe as much as you'd have thought. Like, you see a lot of these good mares would have gone to walk in the park and that, and National Hunt breeding is a very, very inexact kind of science, I suppose, anyway. But this was a Noreen McManus bred Goody Two Shoes, so would have been an incredible success, Fastnet Rock, in keeping with the Southern Hemisphere tradition. On Thomas Carberry, I actually woke up just on a WhatsApp message from maybe one of the fans of this show sending me a message about this the morning of the race. It's fantastic. Like, the Carberries have such a great time for that family. I still feel Paul is probably the sort of jockey you'll never get around again, and just the fact that Johnny Allen and Thomas were basically live so close to each other down there, it was a phenomenal achievement. And I had to laugh when Johnny Allen described him as a fellow who's quiet, but he warms up with a couple of drinks in him. I think Paul's a bit like that as well. Like, Paul is a quiet enough fellow, but brilliant crack with the pint on him and without it as well. And I imagine his mother, who I interviewed, I had the pleasure of interviewing in recent years, Pamela and Joan and Joan and Dan Moorday at Fairyhouse. I'd say this was an immensely proud day because, she sees her daughter obviously representing Ireland in Europe in political stakes. She's seen Philip win the champion hurdle on what everyone else has done in the family, and I'm sure this was well up there.
Yeah, without a doubt. Anyway, we'll move on to bigger and stranger things that happened last week as well. Jim Gorman made some revelations about this Luke Comer case where there were 12 horses back in November 2021. 12 horses in Luke Comer's yard were found to have anabolic steroids, and it was a big hoo-ha at the time, and it went on forever with all the different legal wranglings around it. But anyway, it looked to be settled. Luke Comer's halfway through his 3-year suspension at the moment, and we thought that was the dust had completely settled on it. But all of a sudden, Jim Gorman pops up in the High Court the other day, and he came out with some very crazy allegations. Whether they're true or not, I have no idea. But the first one is he says that Luke Comer tried to get him to take the rap on the whole thing and offered to bribe him to do that. And then the other one is he alleges that Luke Comer has been saying that he has information that Jim Gorman himself doped all the horses, and he did so because he was paid to do so by Coolmore Stud. Crazy stuff, Emma.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was actually Johnny alerted me to the article earlier in the week. I hadn't seen anything about it beforehand. An article in the Irish Times. And to be honest, I thought the article was very confusing. In general, just the way it was written, I was kind of finding it hard to make out who was accusing who of what. But it's kind of like, I don't know, does anyone ever see that Spider-Man meme when everyone's pointing at each other and everyone's accusing something of, everyone's accusing the same person of the same crime. Look, it's bizarre. The whole thing, I suppose, we've talked about it plenty on the show. But like Jim Gorman has come out with this in the High Court. The fact that I suppose the first thing he's saying that Luke Comer offered him the bribe to take the rap, and then Luke Comer is coming back with allegations that Jim Gorman actually doped the horses. So it's all kind of going around and around about. No one I suppose knows we definitely don't know what happened, but it doesn't really scream like something that's like it's something that someone would do if they had done that to go to the High Court and take it that far, because like anything in racing, word goes around. So I'd imagine if Jim Gorman had any involvement in that, it would be like that there would be proof of it. Look, we don't know until it's all heard out, I suppose. But yeah, it's a confusing one, and it'll be interesting to follow how it goes, because very strong allegations being made by everyone, I suppose, without us having any proof of it anyway so far.
Yeah, just on that, the allegations alone would tend to bring the game into disrepute, I'd imagine. What do you think of that, Johnny?
Yeah, there, I suppose a few things to say on this. On Jim Gorman, I'd have met Jim over the races throughout the years, and without making any comment on what's true or what isn't true here, and sometimes truth can be a fairly vague destination. I would have met Luke Comer over the years, and if you spend time in his company, it's a pretty unique experience. And you look at the utterly bizarre stallions that the operation have used, the likes of just looking up today, Midi, Second Thought. I mean, I remember doing spotlights in the Racing Post over the years and thinking, how did they land on a sire like this? Like, none of this makes any sense at all, commercially or otherwise. And the money Luke Comer has put into racing, notwithstanding his legal fees, like, geez, he should have had way more success. And the man, if he put the money, if he used the money a bit differently, like, he could easily be one of the leading owners in Ireland with the money he has. But so when I would meet Jim at the races, yeah, I don't think I've ever met Luke Comer at the races himself, even though he was a designated trainer. One thing I will say about Jim Gorman, I never ever remember him bad-mouthing Luke Comer in any shape or form. And we would talk about Luke's involvement in Galway United, a club close to my heart, who he's put a lot of money into. And we would talk about, Jim would talk about how he met some of the Galway United people and he enjoyed that aspect of it. But I never remember him ever bad-mouthing Luke Comer. And I just think that's an important thing to say. And from my perspective, I thought the story as revealed in the court reports last week was potentially very embarrassing for Galway United to be associated with more sort of wild stories in relation to the Comer operation, and Galway United is absolutely beholden to Luke Comer's money to flourish as a Premier Division club in Ireland. But this stuff isn't obviously good. As for the reporting itself, it's probably not thought about much by people who most people don't buy a newspaper now, and the actual challenge, court reporting, is a really, really unique skill. It's not easily done, and because people aren't buying newspapers anymore, it's probably harder and harder for the courts or for the media organisations to pay somebody to go to all these court cases. So maybe some of the reporting sometimes is a little bit confusing, but what Emma said there, I got a few people come back to me about that they found the whole thing confusing. But if you're trying to tell me that Coolmore would have some sort of interest in what it's accused of here, I mean, I might as well just give up the game altogether. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. And what Jim Gorman is accusing Luke Comer of, obviously I don't know what the truth of that is, but it's staggering stuff. It's a staggering accusation. I'm sure it'll rumble on, but I do think it's just important to point out that about Jim Gorman over the years when I spoke to him. would very much measure people by how they talk about other people who are not in their company. And I'm always uneasy when I hear people bad mouthing other people in front of me when that person doesn't have a right to answer himself or herself. I never heard Jim Corman talk about that. So obviously there's now their relationship must be pretty much irreparable. I don't know where this is going to end up, but the allegations regarding Coolmore, I mean, does anyone think that could be realistically possible? I don't know.
Like you would imagine, whatever about it being possible or impossible or whatever else it is, surely the IHRB have to be looking into this somewhere. You'd imagine that if, as Jim Gorman alleges, Luke Comer went to him and offered him a bribe to take the rap for the horses testing positive, you would think Jim Gorman would have to go straight away, because he's a licensed trainer himself. He would have to go straight away to the IHRB and tell them, and there should have been an inquiry into this long ago or whenever that happened.
And I don't know if that's the way it works, though, Vinny.
Well, it should work that way. That's the whole point, isn't it? Like, if you thought there's something wrong within horse racing, whatever that may be, it's your duty, if you're a licensed person within the industry, to go to the IHRB about it, you would imagine. Should they have a hotline for us all to get in touch with them if we see anything wrong or hear of anything going on within the industry? So you'd imagine that hotline should have been at least rung once or twice in the scheme of all this by both Luke Comer and Jim Gorman if they have their suspicions about whatever. Anyway, we'll move on to the next thing. Is just a little bit light-hearted thing, is Ted Walsh interview. Did you see that, Emma, during the week on Racing TV after the Dublin Fairy House?
Yeah, it was, I suppose, a classic Ted Walsh interview. He makes his point in a always a very humorous way, talking about green horses being Larry. Yeah, it was brilliant. You really missed Ted off RTE Racing and all the other racing channels, because he'd always bring great enjoyment to the thing, and he just has a great way with words to describe the situation. And obviously, he's so knowledgeable on top of it all. Yeah, it was a good interview, and to be fair, like he kind of gets you make you think about things in a way you hadn't thought about it before, about these Larry horses, because I was kind of thinking in my head, like, that's a very good point. Like, I'd often call a horse Larry and green, and they probably just are acting the maggot a small bit more so than being Larry or green. But no, it was funny, kind of classic Ted Walsh. Good to see him back on the screens again.
Yeah, Don McLean had asked him about the horse. He said, "Oh, that's run a bit green." He says, "Green me, granny." He was that so and so was as Larry as this, that, and the other, and he was trying to pull himself up when he got to the front. Good old Ted. You've interviewed him a few times, Johnny, have you?
Yeah, only recently enough at Navan when he had a winner as well, and he's certainly well capable still of training winners, and I'm sure Katie's a good help to the operation. The a lot of us grew up with Ted, Robert Hall, and those characters on RTE, and Ted is definitely unique. Like, you can see when Ruby's on, there's definitely Ruby. The apple didn't fall far from the proverbial tree there in terms of Ruby's manner at times, the way he speaks in this sort of matter of fact way that's very much befitting his father. But Ted remains still unique. Like, he's just kind of, I don't know, just say no filter, but he's just in indifference to kind of indifference to rubbing horses up the wrong way, or just the way he speaks like that. He's from another era. David Jennings did a lovely piece in the Racing Post with him and rare interview with Tony O'Hare now and Robert Hall about that era, and it's kind of sad now that RT racing has become less relevant because of all the other channels down there. But Ted is still brilliant value. Like, you're kind of hoping if you're at the races that he'll do an interview to you. It's never dull. I'll say that for him. I've been on preview nights with him, and I've had funny moments with him. It's never dull, and he's just a unique character, really, the way he spoke. And so, like, you got to remember, Ted is well able to train as well. Like, when he has the right ammunition, he's well able to train, and it was great entertainment himself and Don McLean.
Yeah, he's been trying to win a Grand National again for the last few years, isn't he? That Andy Second now had 3 or 4 goals. You wonder, is there still a Grand National in Ted at some point with some horse coming along? It doesn't seem to happen at the moment for that, I wouldn't have thought. But anyway, another thing from last week, another good news story, is Pat Smullen Raceday raised 350 grand for Cancer Trials Ireland. Gavin Lynch, who'll be a friend of this channel, he was heavily involved in this. His mum died of pancreatic cancer as well, so he's a skin in the game, I suppose you could say, in raising money for this charity. And it's a fantastic thing for everyone involved, between the cycle and everything else that they've done on the day. Emma, what do you think of this? I can never understand why racing doesn't do more of this type of thing, because we're fantastic at it as a sport. The people involved in the sport are terrific when they come together in these sort of ways, and they don't seem to do it often enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, so it was a brilliant result, first of all, I suppose, and you have to commend everyone who was involved, I suppose, in pushing it all along. And I suppose people in racing love to get behind a cause. I suppose this is close to everyone's heart. Pat Smullen, obviously a legend of the sport, so you see big names getting behind this and pushing it, and that kind of pushes it out to the general public then as well. You've got household names who are supporting it. You've got the cycle, like you mentioned, which Gavin Lynch is a major part of. We've seen the likes of AP McCoy and others taking part in that. I think Pat's son Paddy finished. I don't know if he finished first. He finished up close to the finishes this year as well, which was great to see. And then you've obviously got the charity race as well, which is a brilliant initiative. You've got the riders and they all raise, I think, is it about 10,000, and that all goes towards the cancer trials as well. But yeah, look, I suppose when the racing community kind of gets together and rallies behind the cause, you can kind of see how well it can be done. And this is a great example of it. And like you said, maybe they could even do more, if it was pushed more and more for days outside of this. But no, it was a brilliant result, and you have to commend everyone involved.
Yeah. And what about you, Johnny? You took part in that cycle once upon a time, did you?
Yeah, it's like there were some great personalities involved. Unfortunately, I haven't been involved in it since, but this is something racing should be very, very proud of. Like it absolutely staggers me how prevalent cancer is in the year 2025, and how difficult it seems to be to get to the bottom of how we can kind of solve it. And basically these trials are a massive help in that regard. And they're, in fairness to people who had a lot of money in racing, put it together. A lot of people put very good money in when Pat Smullen's first day was on, when Pat was alive at the Curragh. And it's hard for the likes of Gavin Lynch and people to keep organising these things, because there are a million other charities, to get involved in. Like it's not that easy for people just to pay money into charity when you ask them. And it's a fantastic initiative, and incredible money really earned at this stage. Incredible money earned for such a worthy cause.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to last week's racing, which there was plenty of. And just one thing to note on the flat, particularly, even though we're into the full thrust of the jump season as we speak. But I see in Dundalk on Friday, David Murnane and Luke McAteer had a hat-trick. 3 races in a row they won, which is quite astonishing, I would have thought. And then the other thing is, Emma, Clonmel Oil's Chase Day. You were down there for that. What did you make of the day?
I was there. I got in a little bit late. I missed the first 2 races, but got in then. Great crowd there, in fairness. Great atmosphere around the track. Nice local crowd, I'd say. It was great. The on-course bookmakers were running a great. It was kind of a raffle. If you backed a loser on the day, you put your docket into a raffle box in the middle of the ring, and you got a chance. I think they drew a couple of, I don't know, was it 2 or 3 people after every race to win a €50 free bet voucher, which was great. And it got kind of people into the ring, I suppose, on a day which was probably tough enough for punters. Really, there was plenty of very short price winners went in, which, I suppose the ordinary punter wouldn't have been going anywhere near. We had Spindleberry winning the Mayor's Chase down there for Willie Mullen. She was very impressive. Look, she won it comfortably. And then obviously Lete Tomp won the big race on the day, the Clonmel Oil. I suppose, look, the Clonmel Oil is kind of a bit of a funny one. Like, we'd often see a very good horse winning it, but it's never really that great of a spectacle either, I suppose. I was there a couple of years ago when Allaho won it as well. And this was kind of a similar story again. The best horse cruised up and won it easily on the bridle. You have to give plenty of credit to Seneca, I think, in second, though. I thought he ran some race. He showed some enthusiasm. Some of his jumps down the back straight were something to watch. He ran a very good race in second, but it was kind of the favourite show. But Tomp, he's heading to Tingle Creek now to take on John Bon. I suppose it's always good to see a horse like that in the flesh, even though it mightn't be much of a competition. But look, it was a great day in Clonmel. I suppose their biggest day of the year, and it was well supported as well, which was good to see.
Yeah, good stuff. I like that initiative from the bookmakers. That's a nice idea, isn't it? I'd always have a few of those losing dockets I could be thrown in. The other thing there is just that Clonmel Oil Chase, 4 runners in it. I went back through the history of it. It's been a grade 2 forever. And I think you've got to go back 18 years till you have an 8-runner race in it, where there's proper each way betting in it. Always a small field. What do you make of that, Johnny? Those graded races tend to be that way anyway.
Yeah, it's not good though. Like I have to say now, I take very little interest in races like that where you have a horse going in at 1 to 5, and for bookmakers, like punters just don't want to bet in them races really. And it was there was such a mad kind of move for the favourite. I actually put up intense raffles in the race on the basis of the weight he was getting on the ground. Like he ran absolutely about £50 below his best, and it was a non-event really of a race. I don't know. I have a somewhat negative view on them. Like when you have a very good horse like the winner, it is what it is. But I genuinely don't think people have much interest in watching 4 runner races with 5 to 1 on shots. Be that at Cheltenham, Clonmel, or anywhere else. So it's a challenge to get um more competitive races in graded company, because to be fair, there are plenty of options. Like you've even when you've the good down Royal racing on, you've very good racing on in Britain the same day, and it's very easy for horses to go over from one to the other. So there's not like a lack of options for these horses at the moment, but those races that are consistently getting small fields, they need to be looked at, because that's exactly what racing does not need. We need races like you see the Curragh putting up 20 grand minimum pots. That's to get punters betting on the races. That's what we need going forward. We need punters betting on races to support prize money, and 4 runner races with 1 to 5 shots aren't going to cut it at all. So I definitely have reservations, for all that it's not that easy to get people to have runners in them necessarily. The prize money isn't worth it to have a speculative entry. Prize money is a massive problem in Ireland, but I personally, I witnessed that when I'm racing myself. When these odds on shots, I don't think there's much interest in them, to be honest, and that's my perspective.
And then you're
Yeah, it is a
talking
bit
about forward.
deflating though when you are racing and you're kind of waiting for the build up to this big race, and then you're watching the race and it's a schooling session for the winner because he's so much better than the rest of them. Like it is a bit deflating, I suppose, for the race goer, and probably for race goers who aren't who are just there for a day out, maybe don't or wouldn't be fully aware of the level of all the horses in the race. Like they're probably watching it and like this isn't very exciting. What's the big deal? This is the big race of the day, and it's just a horse cantering home without any bit of pressure being applied. So yeah, no, I'd agree with Johnny. And you'd wonder, like, maybe is there too many of races for this type of horse in a short period of time? Like it's a race that maybe horses going to the John Dirk and horses going to Down Royal probably prefer to go there than go to Clonmel. Possibly, I know this horse might be a 2 miler, but yeah, like it's probably a race that needs to be looked at right, because I've been there on a few occasions, and it's not a race you get a massive thrill out of, even though you might see a good horse.
Yeah, but the other thing, you talk about 4 runner races or 5 runner races or whatever, and the lack of competitiveness in it. But then we had on Naas on Sunday, we had a big field maiden hurdle where there's 2 of them, the 2 fancied ones off in front all the way, and nothing else ever involved. What was the winner of that? Port Authority of Gordon Elliott's beat Murat, the Peter Lawler horse with 1-2 bumpers. Like they're literally, I don't know, 50 lengths clear turning in, aren't they, of the rest? No one else taking the part. What do you make of that, Johnny? That's another issue we have with the jump racing.
Yeah, and this is a difficult one for bookmakers, because like if you're trying to lay bets on races like this and you see the way the race develops, you've basically the race might be 3 seconds old and you've done your money, bar that mad race at Down Royal the other day. And this is it's a difficult one in one sense, because like if I'm involved in a racehorse and he's nowhere near good enough to win a maiden hurdle, and the trainer says we'll hunt out the back today, and we'll basically try to finish as far back as we can to get a low mark. I should morally say to him, no, Mr. Trainer, we shouldn't do that, because you're falling into the non-trier bracket. You should be up running on your merits and let the horse, whatever, so on and so forth. So there's an element of, and of course I wouldn't say that. So there's an element of horse getting handicapped since we've gotten into racing. But I do feel that instances like this, we need more data and we saw, I'd never seen this before, but they were kind of showing heart rate data on the jockeys at the start of the Breeders' Cup. We need more data on what effort jockeys are making in races. We need more data on why horses are so far off the pace in a race that, as much as it was a decent maiden hurdle, I mean, we're not talking about 2 Grade 1 horses, I'd imagine, here necessarily out in front who are so far clear. And we need more scrutiny on races like this, because I don't think it's a good look. And basically, trainers who are constantly running horses out the back without really running on the merits, and I'm not suggesting that was necessarily the case here, I think there should be more scrutiny into it, because it's not a good look. And for the bookmakers laying on these races, you're on an absolute hiding to nothing when you have a race like this.
Jesus, there's a few jockeys' rides going back over the years. I'd like to see their heart rate at different times. It'd be interesting reading. Anyway, back to the rest of Naas. We had some good performances. We had Tony Mullins winning the Brown Lad handicap with Letos. I thought that was a fair performance. Only by night scrapes home, but it was probably a good race with Champ Kiley. And then we'd Fruit de Mer as well, might be a nice horse at the Bromheads. What did you make of the rest of that card, Emma?
Yeah, I suppose Flans Towers, one that everyone was looking forward to seeing. He kind of, I suppose, it was more of a warm up for Haydock than anything. That Letos was an interesting one. Tony Mullins had been, I think, bigging him up for a couple of weeks. He mentioned him on a preview or something a few weeks ago. So that was a big one landed for him. I'd say he might have had a few quid on it, and a few others who had been listening to Tony as well. That was a big result there. To be honest, I didn't. I saw a couple of the finishes in Naas yesterday, but I was actually down in Dromahane and I was up in the Foal Sales in Ferryhouse, so I didn't see probably as much of the racing as I should have yesterday. But I watched the replay of the big race, and plenty of people may be disappointed with Plans Tower, but like for me, it was always just going to be a prep run for
Jeez, I thought he was mad disappointed. Like he was, if he were ready for Don Royal.
I know, but his hurdle form is nowhere near his chase form at the same time. Look, I'm sure they probably thought he might have finished a bit closer, but like I couldn't understand why he was such a short price for it either at the same time. No, probably it's easy to say it now, like, but like he'd only run in a few maiden hurdles. Like he wasn't a well established hurdler either. Like I don't know.
That's interesting now.
Down below hurdles, you know.
Yeah, well, I'd rarely tip a chaser over hurdles because I don't think it really computes. And I've seen time and time again it doesn't work out like that. But Spillane Tower last run over hurdles, he was second to Monbeg Park. He was running off a mark that basically was so far below his hurdles, his chase mark, and he was being prepared for a proper race at Downroy recently. So basically, he should have been ready. Now, I did put him up. I think he was 15 to 8. In fairness, he went off a lot shorter, but. This is one of the reasons why it'd be hard to advise anyone to get into horse racing as a betting medium. Like, how can you explain a horse running as badly as that? He jumped perfectly well, as far as I was concerned. He jumped perfectly well, and even if a prep is a prep, the market actually wasn't ignoring him. He was still like nearly even money at the off. I thought it was a very disappointing run, to be honest.
Yeah, we had another one then during the week. You talk about these chasers going back over hurdles, and we know their prep runs and their whatever they are for bigger targets later in the season. But the Irish Grand National winner, Haiti Calours, ran in Newbury during the week over hurdles off a rating of 145, carrying top weight, and still won with Sean Bowen. So I think they don't have to finish down the field. It's the other side of it. Anyway, you weren't that disappointed with Spillane's Towers, Emma. I don't know. I thought it was a very.
I wouldn't be maybe putting a line through him as much as other people are. I suppose we have to give mention to another one entering the Gold Cup picture. Spindleberry could be a bit of a dark horse for a Gold Cup. I was a bit surprised, to be honest, seeing the quotes from her owner. But look, her form as a novice is very, very good. She was very impressive in Clonmel as well, and I think it's good to see an owner kind of coming out and trying to aim high like that. Cause she went joint favourite for the Mayor's Chase after that, but yeah, spin at a Gold Cup, like why not? Give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I see we're only just coming on air today, and I see a horse called My Daddy Paddy, which was my own father's name, actually. And Dan Skelton's goes and wins in Carlisle and is now gone favourite for the Supreme Novice Hurdle after that impressive performance. So it's coming hot and fast at this stage with the jump racing. So we shall finish up with a horse to follow.
Good to see on that note, Vinny, as well. I know people were giving out about me interrupting last week, but Paddy Flood putting it on the line here. No, this mare is going to run in the Supreme and she's going to win the Supreme. So let's get this going here in early November.
There you have it. That's the key to it, isn't it? All right, let's see if we got one. Anyway, have you got one for Cheltenham or elsewhere, Emma, as a horse to follow?
I'll go elsewhere. I'll stick to Clonmel because I was there. I think it's good to see them in person as well. I thought the horse that won the bumper for Gordon was fairly good, and I thought I actually backed Kevin Cromwell's in it, and I thought he came with a run and he was just going to pick him off fairly easily. But it's Panjandrum, I think is how you pronounce it. Gordon's horse, a Blue Brazil 5-year-old. He had won a point-to-point in England, I think. This was his first start under rules and in Ireland for Gordon. I just love the way he put his head down. He battled when the other horse came to him, and he stayed up the hill in Clonmel there very, very well, and they pulled a good few lengths clear the second as well. So look, probably not the strongest bumper you'll see run in Ireland, but looks like a horse who'll be well capable of winning plenty for Gordon.
Very good, yeah. All right, I'll give you one next. One that ran in England during the week, that race I mentioned in Newbury with Haiti Calours. The horse that finished third is called Leanne. trained by Rebecca Menzies, ridden by William Maggs. What was interesting here was the horse was well back, 20-1 into 9-1, sat out the back of the race, and then came cruising through in the straight, but just got no run. Kept getting into running into cul-de-sacs, getting blocked, having to switch around and come back out, and finished third, only beating a couple of lengths. Used to be trained in Ireland once upon a time. It was trained by Josh Halley and won a maiden hurdle in Cork back in 2022. But I think it's won 5 times in the UK. I think it'll win again, because I think that was probably a decent enough race. What about yourself, Johnny?
Yeah, I'll give one in the maiden hurdle we mentioned at Naas, and again, when you're trying to figure out the market, I've said this a million times. I find horses that are going way out in the betting, it's hard to know what to do with them at times, because you feel like a fool afterwards if you back them. But Port Authority, himself and Morat, from my recollection in the morning, were more or less was like 5-4 each or 2 sort of thing. It looked that sort of a maiden hurdle, and you turn up at Naas then, and in the ring, Port Authority is not 5-4; he's 5-1. You're like, right, this horse can't win. Then he goes 5-5. Then the money starts coming, and he goes off 130. So you're like, he's 130, but he was 5-4 this morning. So what do I do here? But in any event, if you got 5-1 each way on him, you may have had the best bet you'll ever have, because at the very, very worst from the tape, he was going to be in the first 3, and it became obvious a long way out that Jack Kennedy had the measure of Morat, who had an unbeaten bumper horse, who may not necessarily have been in love with the testing ground. I don't know. He got quite tired. Jeez, he beat him by 17 lengths, so he was an expensive purchase. This was his debut at the track, and even if you look at some of those in behind, we can talk about maybe the efforts of some of those in behind. I thought this was a hell of an effort. A horse with a lovely pedigree, and he's going to be, no issue stepping him up and trip either. But to do that over 2 miles, suggests he's a very, very bright future. May even get 3 miles. Port Authority, one to follow. Mightn't necessarily be a Cheltenham horse. He might particularly want proper winter ground, but very, very impressive. Like, he was valued for even more than the 17 lengths at the line.
Yeah, I agree. The second horse now did fall into a hole in the latter stages. He was treading water in the last furlong or 2, that Murat, but I like him. I think there's a day in him again. He'll make a hurdle by the look of him. Just the ground was probably a little bit too testing for him as well, and he probably went off a bit too quick. But anyway, yeah, I'd agree with you. Good performance in Port Authority. Anyway, thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks for all your contributions, guys. And we'll be back again next week with something similar. So if you are placing a bet, do gamble responsibly, and make sure you subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.